think maybe 30 years ago when people thought of interior designers, it was very like buttoned up and the lady with pearls and very formal and only for like uber wealthy, fancy people. And there's been a lot of people I think who have broken down those barriers, and I consider myself to be in that category.
Welcome to King of the Big Deal podcast, hosted by Gretchen Kingma and Tiffany Dill, two Southern gals planted in the Midwest. We are a couple of occupational therapy entrepreneurs here to share our passion. From vacation homes to kitchen utensils, we talk all things universal design. And as universal design influencers, our goal is to create a more inclusive world together.
We are kicking off our first season by connecting you with some awesome people here to help you ring in the holiday season with some universal design. Whether you're sipping on your favorite warm beverage or commuting to or from work, tune in and be sure to hit subscribe. We'd hate for you to miss out on the tips, trends, topics, and products that are leading the way within the universal design space.
And we sound so good today because we are recording from this little box inside of Maryville's Design and Visual Art Studio. So we would like to give our local design school at Maryville University a shout out. Thank you for making our podcast extra awesome. We've all heard of HGTV, and some of us may actually really love HGTV and addicted to watching the shows, but it has shown the world beautiful design, but it is not often you hear the word beautiful and accessible in the same sentence. Yet Maegan Blau from Blue Copper elevates the world with adaptive design. She adds a refreshing spin on what it means to be an inclusive interior designer. We are here with her today to talk about what fueled her passion to launch Blue Copper Design. So let's dive in. Thanks for joining us today, Maegan. So we have a little bit of an icebreaker question to ask out of curiosity. So tell us something that many people may not know about you. So if we were scouring Instagram and couldn't find that information, what's the secret?
Yeah, so many things. Okay, something people don't know about me. I'm terrified of fireworks. Ooh. Yeah. And I always forget that until like New Year's Eve and the 4th of July. And then I'm like, oh, I hate them. I don't know. I've always had a fear. My parents told me even when I was a baby, like a young kid, I always hated them. I'm afraid that it's just like a burning ball of fire that's going to like come down from the sky and get me.
Yeah. I think that makes you smart and have great discernment. I think more people should be terrified of fireworks.
Yeah. Like I'm never going to be in a firework accident because I'm not going to be touching them. No.
That is such a funny, get to know you question. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
The real reason people join the podcast is to learn about beautiful and functional design. So tell us about your baby, your child, Blue Copper Design, and how it was created.
Yeah, so I'm the owner and lead designer for Blue Copper Design. I started my business 3 years ago now, and it started because of my own personal need is kind of how it got started. So I've been a wheelchair user for 12 years. And when I bought my first house, I knew any house I purchased would have to be renovated. So I was trying to find like a home that needed like as minimal renovation as possible. I found one. And then the minute we moved in, my boyfriend and I, but he's my husband now, but we were just dating at the time, so started tearing it apart. And we brought in a contractor friend to do the renovation. And it really became apparent that like people don't understand accessibility. And I came from living in a college dorm, so I didn't really have to think about it. It was just like, I got the accessible dorm and then that was it. But in my own house, like I wanted to make some changes, and I also wanted it to be really aesthetic and then also like work for me specifically, not so much just like to the masses, if that makes sense. So I was really having to like work with my contractor on what I wanted, and he kept pushing me into like ADA guidelines. And he's like, well, the ADA guidelines say this and they say that. And I was like, well, that's not really what I need and want. And then also to achieve that in this space would take like so much more time and money and effort than it was worth for me in order to live comfortably. So I went through that whole process, kind of got my contractor on board. He finally understood what I was talking about. And during the whole process, I was like, this would be great. Like if someone did this for me, because at the same time I was like watching HGTV and I've always been really interested in interior design. And I was like, it would be awesome if someone just got it. Like if I could hire a designer or a contractor that was like, oh yeah, like I get it. And I didn't have to just overly explain and like advocate for myself once again in this area of life. And that's where my wheels started turning, where I was like, like you love design, you love being creative, like maybe that's something that you can do. So I kind of sat on the idea for a couple of years, did a lot of research to see if it was already out there, like already being done as a traditional interior design studio with a focus of accessibility. And I didn't find too many options, and especially not in my area. So I went back to school for design and really like put all of my eggs in that basket. Worked for a couple places before I started my own business, but I always knew my goal was to have a business that really focused on bridging accessibility and beautiful interiors. So 3 years ago is when I took the plunge on that, and here we are.
That is awesome. I love that story. And that is why we started this podcast. We wanted to share all of these amazing stories about these people that are making changes in the world today. And we always talk about how universal design is designing beyond ADA. So I'm so glad you touched up on that. And speaking of interior design, so what inspired you to face the intimidation of entering a seemingly oversaturated interior design market? And what is your secret sauce? Because we know there's tons of designers online and on Instagram that we follow. So what's your secret?
I would say, I mean, obviously the accessibility factor is a big reason why people come to us. That is, that would be like a really big ingredient of our secret sauce. But I think there's also this level of like relatability and like casualness where I think maybe 30 years ago when people thought of interior designers, it was very like buttoned up and a lady with pearls and very formal and only for like uber wealthy, fancy people. And there's been a lot of people, I think, who have broken down those barriers. And I consider myself to be in that category before being in like the ultra fancy category. So a level of like comfort and relatability and just like elevating like a comfort level of design, but obviously mixed with the accessibility. That's our bread and butter. So
that is amazing. And I love when you answered that question, you said that we can offer, and it's so cool that you had this vision like years ago. And now 3 years later, you have a team and it's not just you, and you've built this awesome business. So tell us, what do you love most about what you and your team do?
Oh, what do I love most about it? I love that moment where things just come together. And I know that's not a very like concrete answer, but there's like what the client wants in their style and what they tell us. And then there's also like what the space needs, and like the style of the home and the neighborhood and the exterior and the architecture. And then there's like how we, as the designers, like how we see that. And I feel like what I love most is just like really, really listening to both of those components and then blending them together and then elevating it at the same time. So that's what I mean, where it all comes together. It's like our vision matches perfectly with what the client is wanting and then what the house is wanting, but then elevating it and like giving it that little extra like oomph that people wouldn't normally be able to do on their own.
That's awesome. I feel like that's such a designer answer too. Like putting all the
So,
pieces
out there.
I love it.
I feel like it happens like a couple times in a project, and those are my favorite moments where I'm like, yes, like it's all fitting. When it doesn't fit, I guess that would be like the opposite answer. Like that's my least favorite part because I'm like, it's just not working. And I usually just take a minute and it ends up like fitting together.
Great. Well, thank you for answering that question. So the next question we have for you is since you were talking about all your projects and everything, we've been following you on Instagram, seeing a lot of great projects, and you have a great eye. What is your favorite project and why?
Oh,
That's
I don't
really hard.
know. I don't know if I have a favorite, to be honest. I know everyone wants to know. I think the one is, I don't know, it's not really my favorite, but I will say the one that got me most excited recently is we remodeled all of the bathrooms in a home. So it's our poinsettia project. And we'll be photographing the bathrooms. Those photos will be up soon, the other ones, but the master bathroom is up right now. And it was for a family, and none of them have any disabilities, but they were, one, planning for the future, two, planning for a catastrophe, and then three, planning for their parents for when they come into town, because they did notice like their parents were getting, not as spring chicken as they used to be. And we're having a lot of difficulty like getting in and out of like the tub showers. And they were like, this is just not good. Like there's a lot of hazards here, and we want our parents to feel really comfortable when they come into town. So we managed to we had 4 bathroom remodels in that house, and we have 2 bathrooms now that have completely curbless roll-in showers. And then the other 2 still do have the tub shower combination. So there's not only one, there's 2 different options now for someone who ever had a chair or a walker or an assistive device, or someone who just can't get their foot over a curb, to be able to use those bathrooms. And I feel really proud about that, because it was probably one of our first projects where I was like, oh, like this, people really do see the value in accessibility outside of the disabled community.
That's amazing. I'm like wanting to jump out of my seat. And
It's so rare to find people like that. I feel like we even have a hard time finding people to plan ahead and plan for the future and all of that.
Yeah, I just told a client yesterday. She was like, what do you think I need to do to stay at home? And I said, preparedness and planning are the 2 main things that will keep you at home. So it's so exciting to hear that family taking that proactive step. So props to them. And I can't wait to see more on the Poinsettia project. I wanted to ask earlier, when you were talking about the inception of Blue Copper, to tell us a little bit more about the name and the inspiration. But on your website, it says, as Arizona natives, we pull inspiration from the desert and keep our design philosophy casually intuitive. Paint us a picture. What's behind the name? What's behind your casual philosophy?
Yeah. So my last name, Blau, means blue in German. It's actually my married name, so it's my husband's name, but
what a bonus. What a treat.
Yeah. So it also is a slang term for drunk. Apparently, like Blau in German is a slang term for
even
better. But I decided to go with the blue. So I knew I just wanted the word blue incorporated in some way. And I know, Tiffany, that we've had this discussion before about our names. And so I was trying to like figure out a word that went with blue well, and I also wanted some kind of like homage to the desert in Arizona without being too literal or like geographic, because I do have like expansion plans and I didn't want to be super like geocentric with my name. So copper is like Arizona state metal, and it's used everywhere here. So I don't know, just after weeks of putting together names and colors and adjectives and nouns, that's what stuck. So that's where the name came from. And then to answer the second part, I mean, I feel heavily inspired by the desert, and I've lived in Arizona my entire life. And a lot of people, like, I don't think they can see the beauty that the desert has. But for me, it's really resilient, and it goes through seasons of like blooming and then being very, dry and brown. And I just love every part of it. So my personal style is very influenced by Southwestern and like Santa Fe and like hacienda decor. I know it's not for everyone, but it's definitely for me. So that's
I love that. I love the copper. I love everything about your name. And we've actually both been to Arizona on separate occasions. And I have to say, like, the first time I went last fall, it was absolutely gorgeous and beautiful. And I really want to go back. I mean, even though it's just like people call it, I guess, a desert, but I think it's beautiful.
Yeah.
And I had some margaritas there. So the Blau part is fitting.
Flour on both sides. I know. It's great. Well, I know we have really great food. I feel like we're just a little like hidden gem that people haven't totally caught on to yet. Like there's been a ton of growth, but it is like a secret little treasure. And we're also, our desert is the only one with the saguaro cactus. So the saguaro desert goes from Arizona down into Mexico, but it's the only place in the world that like the saguaro cactuses grow. So if you see a saguaro cactus picture, it most likely was taken in Arizona or Mexico.
Funny.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. That's so interesting.
A free tidbit today on
free tidbit science. Yeah. My first love was environmental science. That's what I majored in college. So I can tell you a lot about that too.
Yeah, that was the first comment my husband made when we got there. He was like, "Oh my gosh, I've never seen a cactus before." It was just so cool to see everything. But yeah,
they're really cool.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. It was a beautiful meaning behind your name for sure. Now, on your website, we noticed that you charge $400 for accessibility consultation. And as women in business, we know that sometimes it's hard to know our worth and add tax. So as universal design advocates, we also know and understand the value of universal design and accessibility. So do you find that the clients you serve see this value like we see it?
Yeah, I definitely do. And that's, accessibility consulting kind of came up as a need from like fellow designers and also just clients in general. Like we kept getting asked like, well, I've already have the plans. Like I'm already working with my contractor. I'm already like past the point really of needing a designer, or they didn't really want that designer experience, but they're like, but can you just like look it over? And I was like, I guess I don't see why not. So that's where that service came out of. And then having like all three different of services that we offer, I feel like there's kind of something for everyone. Like there's value in the virtual design, there's value in full service design. It really just depends on where you're at in your life, how much help you're needing, and then like what you're valuing. Like you might not value me picking out a handmade crazy tile pattern and then working with the tile installer to do that. Like maybe you just want a little bit of guidance, and that would be more of accessibility consulting, but maybe you do, like maybe you are wanting something like a little bit over the top or just pushed up a little bit, or you want like that level of project management, and that's full service design. So yeah, I do find, I really haven't put much thought into like, oh, like, is it worth it? Am I valued enough? Like, I think that maybe because I have listened to a lot of other business owners go through that, I'm like, you have to believe it yourself in order for others to. I really haven't put too much thought into it. And I've adjusted my prices. They've gone up, they've gone down. Like I've really tried to find like the sweet spot of like what is worth my time, and then what is worth my client's time too.
That's awesome. And I love a woman in business that can be vulnerable and say like, hey, I'm just trying to figure this thing out. I've gone up, I've gone down, I've stayed the same. So that's awesome. Thanks for sharing that.
Yes, that is really important. That's something I think that a lot of us struggle with is the price point. The price point is always such a challenge.
Yeah. And with design, it's like so ambiguous too. Like there's so much mystery in the world of interior design. So like even me asking peers, I feel sometimes awkward if it's not the right person, where it's like, well, how much do you charge an hour? Like people will be like, I'm not going to tell you. It's like, well, I just want to know, like, am I doing the right? Like we all just want to know if we're doing it right. Like, but we are, because we're doing it. So whenever I feel that way, I have to get over it.
Yeah. And I also didn't even think about, like, I think my mom might have mentioned this before, but it's like, think about the time you're putting into like researching everything and like putting everything into the designs that you're doing for your clients. So I think that's incredible that you've done that and been confident in that too.
Thank you. I think the over communication is something that I'm trying to master. I'm in like regular communication. I'm trying to get into over communication. But once like we explain all that we do, it becomes worth it. And then some things we give our clients an option on, like, well, we can choose this if you want, or you can handle it on your own. But like more than often, once we're in it and it comes to that time, they're like, can you just take care of it? Because they know like the coordination of time is money, and time is valuable, and also resources and connection are valuable. And that's what we offer on top of like design.
Yeah.
So it's a lot.
I
I feel
love
like
that.
design's only like 20% of what we do.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that is like a perfect segue into my next question. I love that you're talking about like these level of offerings, but also letting our listeners into your behind the scenes of being a full service designer. And half the time, like getting people to buy in this functional space concept or universal design, accessible design, adaptive design, whatever we want to call it. It's not mainstream, which is why we have a hard time calling it something. But not once we get past that hurdle, then there's filling the space with beautiful products that work. And so tell us a little bit about how you decide which products to include on your full service design. I've seen a lot of your Instagram posts about different beds and chairs. And I think that's awesome that you take the time to educate the public on, hey, look at this chair you can get at, XYZ big box store. It's accessible because of X, Y, and Z. Tell us about that process.
Yeah, I think that's like going back to the beginning, like that's where a lot of listening happens. So the reason why I feel like it's so hard to define is that it means so many different things to people. So like saying like this chair is accessible. Well, what's accessible for one is not accessible for all, and people with disabilities and people who work in the industry definitely know that.
Preach.
So it's like it's so hard to market something that way. And that's what I mean, all the way back to the beginning, that's what I was finding in my own personal experience, where I was like, well, that's not really accessible for me, or like, that's just not going to help me. So I don't need that. So going with that, with furniture, we just put our listening hats on like crazy. And we ask a lot of questions, like how often do you want to sit and watch TV? Like, where do you watch TV? Do you watch TV with your family? Like, how do you transfer into bed? Like, oh my gosh, just so many questions. And kind of then put our lens on from there. Like some people are very firm with like, this is how I do it. I've tried all these things and this is my measurements of bed height or chair height, or like, these are the ramification or like the specifications that I have. And some people are like, I don't really know. I haven't thought about it that much. I'm just making do. And so that's where, like, if people are in the making do category, we'll definitely offer more suggestions. So like a power chair user has so many different specifications than a manual chair user. And even like some people in power chairs or manual chairs, like they might not ever want to transfer out onto a sofa. Like they might find their wheelchair the most comfortable thing ever and they don't plan on it. And they're like, I just want it to look good. So there's a lot of things where like there are some places that are, my clients are adaptive clients, but their spaces are not, because they're like, we just want it to look good for our guests. Like even if it's the most comfortable sofa in the world, it's like, I'm most likely never going to transfer out of it. So, or transfer onto it. So it's a long listening process. And then we scour all of our vendors and all of our sources from there, trying to blend like the style with the specifications. And if we can't find anything or can't make anything work like that, then we go into a custom route and work with our custom vendors on that.
That's awesome.
That's cool. Yeah. I love how versatile it is too. Cause like, I mean, that's what universal is, accommodating for a wide range of bodies and a wide range of people with a wide range of abilities. So I love that you guys target just, anyone that's out there in the market wanting your help for interior design. And so this brings to our last question. So as we get closer to the holidays, what are some tips or advice that you would give consumers about designing for entertainment to encourage social participation and gatherings?
So I have a couple of things that I always go to. Depending on the entry of your home, like a lot of people usually at least have a threshold up to the door, or they have a couple steps. So if you do have someone who uses a wheelchair, you can get a portable ramp on Amazon, and I can send you guys the link if you want to put in show notes or anything.
Great.
Yes.
But if you Google portable ramp, a lot of different options come up with a lot of different like price points and dimensions. So, and they usually fold in half. So you can keep it in your garage or in like a spare closet or something. So that alleviates a lot of anxiety. Just like being able to get into the home is like, if you, I don't know, like if you can overcome that hurdle, then there's a lot of anxiety I guess, like relieved for the person. Another thing, like always, food, it can be like difficult if it's like a buffet style and up on a countertop. So just offering to make someone a plate is always really nice. And then I would kind of take a look at like your living room situation or wherever, or your dining room or wherever you're going to be entertaining for most of the time, and seeing like, okay, if I just moved this over a little bit or like scooted this chair or moved this chair into the other room for the evening, like, would that make a space for my person with an assistive device? Or making sure like if they need a sturdy chair that like no one sits in that sturdy chair for them to get in and out of. So like physically making space for people, I think would be really considerate, because anxiety is a hot topic right now for a lot of people. And I think like that gets a little overlooked in the disabled community. There's like a huge level of like physical anxiety that comes with like going over to someone's house. So those would be great. And then also like your bathroom situation. And it depends kind of on how close you are with your guest. I think like you might be able to ask like, hey, like, what do you need to use the bathroom? Like, I want to make sure that my bathroom works for you. And if it doesn't, kind of asking the person like, well, what do you need? Like, I want to make sure that you're comfortable and you don't have to leave just to use the bathroom.
That's a great point.
Yeah, I think that one, like, you have to kind of feel that one out with your guests, like whether it's your best friend or someone you just met, like see like the level of appropriateness to ask them those questions, and without getting too personal. But at the same time, like I think it could be really kind to know that that person's like thinking of you all the way through to include you.
Yeah, because you're simply being welcoming and being inclusive for all the different people that are coming through your door. But yeah, I love the ramp thing. I actually was just recently looking some of that stuff up, but I love that Amazon offers that. And even like they offer a threshold, the rubber threshold. So like we have a friend that's in a power wheelchair, and so the power wheelchairs have a harder time going over a normal threshold, even though we have a ramp in the back. I've been wanting to get one of those rubber thresholds just to try out and see if it works. But yeah, that's a good point. We'll definitely add those to our show notes.
Yeah, they're super great. I have one for going in and out of my garage. Like I didn't do anything permanent there. And then that's how I get in and out of my clients' homes, since I have a portable ramp. People ask me that all the time.
That's awesome. Oh my gosh, I didn't even think about that.
Yeah. And the longer ones like can go over a couple steps. So if you have like a couple steps up to your home or something, like just making it work, but also not making it feel like that person like is a burden or needs to be carried. Like all of that stuff can get really like embarrassing for some people or not possible for others.
Or anxiety inducing.
Yeah, anxiety inducing for sure.
It gives me anxiety, and I am an able-bodied person. Like you just saying that paints a very anxious picture in my mind. So that component of mental health and being able to prepare for navigating the holidays is a really great point. So thanks for sharing that. Tell everyone before we let you go, where can they find you on social media?
Yeah, so we use Instagram every day. Blue Copper Design is our handle. And then we have a Facebook, but we hardly ever check it. So if you're in our Facebook messages, super sorry, send us a DM. And then you can find all of our email and our website through Instagram as well. All the links are on there.
Awesome.
And your website is www.bluecopperdesign.com.
It's bluecopper.design.
Blue Copper. Oh yeah, that's right.
The .com was taken, so we had to get creative.
That's right. I remember seeing that. Yeah, we'll put that in our show notes too.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, thank you guys for having me. This was awesome.
Yay. Thanks for being here. Happy holidays.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much for being here. To learn more about what we do as outside of the box OTs, check out our entrepreneurial adventures. Gretchen at Truehold and Empowered Homes, and Tiffany at Blue Day 2. Thanks again for listening, and we hope to have you with us for our next episode.